You're listening to SEN Insight, powered by Rubric. Each episode, we dive into the big ideas, challenges, and stories shaping student experience across campus. Hi, I'm Paul from the Student Experience Network. On today's first episode of SEN Insights, we're diving into the Student Safety Conference, what it is and why it matters, with Onor from the University of Sydney Students' Union. Thanks very much for spending the time with me today, Onor. I'm really grateful. I heard nothing but positive things about the Student Safety Conference. So I suppose where we start would be, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, for sure. So great to hear that you've only heard positive things. Thank you for saying that. The idea actually began in our first year on board, so 2022, when the NSSS results came out, survey results came out, stating that 1 in 6 students on university campuses in Australia had been sexually assaulted or harassed. And so I think that was a big call to action for a lot of people who work in these sectors. And so we have to shout out the executive on the USU board before us who initially came with this idea, and we sort of started brainstorming it and started working it through. And then really in 2023, that's when it kind of took off and we started planning the event as everyone saw it in February.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to throw questions. I have got a list of questions, but as they come up, I'll just go to them. Why you and not the university?
Yeah, I think there's a few points to that. I think it's really important that these sorts of solutions and initiatives come from students and come from grassroots groups, because I think there's so much information and data out there which shows when it's the people that are most affected coming up with initiatives or solutions, they're going to be the most effective. I also think that unfortunately for a lot of victim survivors, universities do kind of represent a really kind of triggering institution in terms of it is sort of the institution at which they have experience these crimes. So I think it's really important that it comes from a student-led body, and so that's what the union is, and we focus particularly on that kind of student-centered approach. So I think that was really important for us to kind of pick it up ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So what would you say were the objectives and the mission for the conference?
Yeah, definitely. So our goal was to achieve grassroots and student-led policy creation, adaptation and resource sharing amongst the student organizations. I think that's because it seems to me that like at each university, there's different sort of responses and different policies and different initiatives, and some of them are really good and some of them are maybe not so good and can be improved, and so it was really about coming together and having that knowledge sharing. Obviously these things become quite insular in terms of it being the particular university's policies or the particular college's policies, but at the end of the day, if we're prioritizing student like health and safety, then the best thing is ensuring that we can have the best solutions and the best initiatives and the best responses out there and available for everyone to kind of use. So really the idea was to kind of get that resource sharing amongst the universities and to also kind of bring, student leaders who have a wealth of knowledge and who have a wealth of, reach amongst their universities together to kind of start tackling this issue.
Excellent. Thank you. Sidebar here. I've been around this game for too many years now, 21 years. And I think it's fair to say that one of the things that student unions and especially elected officers do really well is activism. And this is one of those spaces. But sometimes that can also work against you when you try an initiative like this to bring different voices to the table from different universities. Those the political agendas sometimes don't match. Did you feel that it went well and it was very much a one focus event? And how do you feel that came about?
Yeah, I mean, I was super proud of this event in terms of it brought together all different stakeholders and groups. I think it would be remiss to not mention the fact that we had significant funding from the university, which helped us put this on, and they were very supportive. And we also had, attendees from the SRC, which are kind of the activist union, and the Student Representative Council at uni, as well as the USU and clubs and societies, and particularly the USU, as it does have that commercial operations side, is perhaps potentially sometimes less involved in that kind of activist approach. So I was super proud of the way in which all of these groups kind of came together. And I think, honestly, like, it's a bit of a naff answer, but this was something that we were very aware of from the very start of this process, and something that myself particularly, I was very keen about ensuring we had all groups working together. Also, another group to mention is the colleges, and obviously the importance of having them involved in the conversation, but also holding space for the fact that that has been a really triggering environment for a lot of people. So for me, it was kind of coming into this as someone who has been to college, as someone who has sat on the SRC, as someone who has sat on the union as well, and understanding that at the end of the day, even though these groups have, different spheres in which they operate, we all ultimately want safety for students, and being mindful that that was the approach that we took into all conversations, all invitations, and just kind of having that perspective. I think it's silly to try and say that those divisions or those divides or those differences in opinion aren't there. They are there, but it doesn't mean that we can't come together. So that was kind of the approach. And I think we're lucky that in the union and in the working party, we had people that had connections with each of those groups, the more activist unions, the colleges, the university administration. And so we were able to bring those groups together.
Fantastic. You touch on colleges there, and obviously one of the major findings of a number of reports now is the environment in colleges around safety. And I work with a number of colleges here at UQ who are working really hard at changing the culture and making them safer spaces and dealing with, upfront with the problem. Did you get many attendees from outside of Sydney colleges? Were there other colleges that came along from different universities?
Yeah, so I think the thing was, with this being the first conference, there was only so much reach that we could have with attendees. So we didn't actually, I don't believe, have attendees from colleges of other universities, but that's definitely something that we would love to have in the future, and I think is really important. The USyd colleges were super open to being involved, and we did have some representatives come along. It's a tricky time of year, however, that we held the conference, because it also was during the training week that the colleges have for their executives. So I think moving forward, something that we're discussing is kind of a different time period, so that it is as accessible to all of those stakeholders as possible. But I think this first iteration of the conference was just kind of put it out there and see who wants to come along, and it's been good to see, UQ colleges or Melbourne colleges or those groups which we can potentially push to invite in the future.
That's great. I mean, we did some work. Andrew asked us to promote the conference for you through our membership, which we did. But I can certainly reach out to contacts at the colleges and see if we can't increase that reach moving forward, because I think it's a really important discussion. So I take from that then that this is an ongoing initiative that you guys are pushing forward with. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like it was a great success. So and with these sorts of things and these issues, like, I think the most important thing is to keep momentum building and to keep it rolling. And I think it's absolutely fabulous that we were able to create a network of people who work in this space and people who are passionate about this, and it would be unfortunate to lose that. So I think we're very keen on making this an annual thing. Obviously, my term at the USU is about to come to an end, but I'm really excited by the kind of talent that we've got in the first year board directors, and I have 100% faith that they'll be able to continue it. But I think at this point in time too, a lot of the activism like first-hand activism has been done. I think that's what we saw in like the 2010s. And now it really is about those kind of regulatory responses or initiatives. And I think that's something that is really important to have a student voice on. And I think it's something that a larger swath of people can be involved in. So I think that's the focus moving forward, and that kind of echoes the draft action plan. Well, sorry, no, not the draft anymore, the action plan and the ombudsman and that sort of thing that the government has implemented. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a very important time to continue this work. And yeah, I think it went really well, but there are also a lot of things that I think everyone on the working party would love to improve. So I guess we'll have to have a second crack at it.
Yeah, 100%. You would have 100% support from certainly the our members that I spoke to that went, and from a SEN's perspective, I think it's an initiative that absolutely has to be continued. And I think there's room for it to grow possibly into a body of its own, that in support of the aims of what you've started here. So I think it's definitely got legs. What would you say? How would you measure success of the conference?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Because like obviously, we came away from the conference with an 8-page report which had, 20 something recommendations, right, for students and leaders to take back to their universities, which I think is obviously in and of itself a great achievement. But I think like the more intangible things are also huge measures of success. Like I think the fact that people are talking about this, the fact that we were able to create those connections between the different, safer communities groups in the universities. I think just the environment also that we were able to create at the conference, which was, as you mentioned, having people from different stakeholders and people from different institutions who felt, safe and able to like be involved in the conversation. I think all of those are also measures of success. I think another measure of success is, the kind of speakers that we were able to attract and the presentations that we were able to hear. So yeah, I think there's a few things there. It's not always just about the recommendations. And I think that success with something like this can't particularly be measured because it's not like you have a conference or a report and then, sexual assault and harassment on campus goes away, right? Like it's an epidemic 100%. And it's going to be something that continues over the next however many years. So I think it's about recognizing the ways in which the conference has been able to add to the movement that's already going and the ways in which we can take the conference into the future. For instance, I know the University of Sydney Union is meeting with some of our university bigwigs soon to discuss the recommendations and how we can implement them. So yeah, I don't think it stops with the report. Obviously, I was really happy to have that report on those recommendations created, but it's now about, harnessing those recommendations, implementing them, and harnessing those connections and those communities that were created at the conference for good.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you could share that to me afterwards, I'd love to share that across our membership because I'm sure a lot of them have got it. But if there isn't, I'm sure there's others that would love to get their hands on it and see what they can't do to implement it. That's fantastic. Yeah, you touched on speakers there, and one of the pieces of feedback I had from a couple of colleagues was there was fantastic speakers. How did you go about choosing who was going to speak, and what was the process where you reached out to people?
Yeah, so it was kind of an ongoing thing with speakers. We sort of had originally like a brainstorm of topics or issues that we wanted canvassed. And then it was like a sort of research and kind of collaborative approach of figuring out people we knew of or people who had done work that we thought would be good to be involved in the conference. I think the number one thing for us when we were curating the speaker list and the sessions was ensuring that we sort of had that intersectionality represented. So that meant having speakers from, different marginalized backgrounds, having speakers who could speak to the experiences of queer victim survivors or victim survivors with a disability or, also different stakeholders, as we've talked about previously, that could speak to, regulatory response or, on the ground response and student, activists, but also having, people who were doing doing the institutional reviews at colleges. So I think like for us, it was just ensuring that we had as many perspectives represented as possible, and kind of ensuring that we really tackled. I mean, obviously with these things you can never tackle the whole question, like
it's too big to take on in one chunk for sure.
Exactly but I was really proud with the way that we approached that in terms of ensuring we had as much representation as possible, and that includes like in terms of the sessions that we did, having people that wanted to present research, having people that wanted to present regulatory responses, having people that wanted to do workshops, having people who wanted to speak to their own personal experience. It was important to have that kind of breadth of presentation.
Okay, that's you spoke about making sure you have an intersectionality of people involved. How do you do that yourself on campus? If I can ask, Onor, how do you reach the average student? Because I think having been involved in both the SRC and the student union, you would know that typically the people that interact with those bodies are either political or activists, or might just be through a volunteering as part of a clubs and society. There's a whole host of students that sit in the middle there that you possibly don't interact with a lot. How do you get the voices of those? Because as you've said, from the 1 in 6, there's a large chunk of those people that have had bad experiences. How do you access the information from that to be able to inform your agenda on how you can change?
Yeah, and that's a really tough question. It's really tough.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Like it's so true, and it's important to speak about, and it's one that was brought up in the conference, of that sort of middle group of students who honestly a lot of the time don't even know these services or initiatives or things are happening or existing. And it's a really hard one, and I cannot give you a straight answer, but I think it's bringing as many people into the fold as possible, acknowledging that like there's no right way to be an activist, or there's no like right way to be an advocate for something, and kind of ensuring that we're telling those stories, as I mentioned, of the marginalized communities that are disproportionately affected by sexual assault and sexual harassment. So I think that was a really key feature of the conference, which was kind of recognizing the experience of international students, or the experience of students who, may not have the networks or connections to kind of reach out about these sorts of things, or may not have the language to. So it's kind of ensuring that we continue those conversations, that those conversations reach those groups, but also that those conversations are had in an accessible way. So that looks like having accessible reporting mechanisms which are multilingual, or which have counselors involved who may be from a particular subset of the community that other people will feel comfortable talking to. I think that's a good step forward. But unfortunately that's a question that plagues me too, and that I haven't developed an answer for yet.
Oh, listen, I think it's a struggle across our entire membership. Is how do you reach those people in a proactive manner, because there's so much good being done across the student experience space in the universities, but you've got to be able to know about it to be able to access. But these initiatives, I think, themselves create a visibility of the discussion, I think, which will help towards that. Did you have any considerations you needed to make for the conference around inclusion and diversity to make sure that the attendees had the experience you were hoping for them?
Yes, for sure. That was a number one kind of point for us. I have to shout out here Grace Wallman, who's a first year director on the USU board, and who also is the portfolio holder for like disability inclusion, who produced an absolutely fabulous policy or kind of set of recommendations for us regarding hosting these sorts of events and ensuring that they're accessible for people with disability to attend. So there were a lot of particular initiatives that we included through that. So that was ensuring the rooms were accessible. That was ensuring we had transcripts, like live transcripts of each presentation for people who maybe need to see that. That was like putting up the PowerPoint slides of speakers beforehand and after so that particular people could refer back to them. There was also a really important thing for us, pardon me, sorry. A really important thing for us was having a counselor on site, like a registered psychologist on site the entire time, so that if people who were in attendance were triggered or needed to speak to someone, that person was there. And then also, as I mentioned, we were so lucky to have a working party that was super diverse. We had people of color, we had queer people, people with disabilities, and it was just ensuring that that was reflected in everything we did. So, you know, we had an incredible welcome to country by one of the aunties we've worked with previously. We had, you know, as I mentioned, speakers from different backgrounds. And yeah, it was just ensuring that we sort of hit all of those points. Obviously, you'll never, like, there's always room to improve, and that's one of the things. But yeah, that was kind of how we approached that.
Fantastic. Okay, so you think back to the conference. What were your key highlights?
What were my key highlights? I mean, for me, it is something that I'd been working on for 2 years and I'd kind of been taking carriage of, and it's something that's very close to my heart. So to just be kind of standing there in the opening of the first day, listening to Nina Fennell speak and seeing, you know, 50 attendees sitting there listening from colleges, from the university, from across Australia was just like a very, very special moment for me, and probably quite healing for me personally. So that was just, you know, seeing that group of people who were so passionate and respectful and wanting to make a difference was just so fabulous, and seeing it come to life after such a slog to get it to happen, because I have no conference planning experience. You know, I didn't know what I was getting into. I remember sitting in a meeting with Andrew and just being like, I don't really know what a conference is, but I've got it and I'll do it. Like, so that was
fabulous.
Great. Yeah. So that was awesome. And then like, it's impossible, I'd say, to pick out a favorite or a highlight from any of the presentations. They were all just so fabulous. But I think, you know, the kind of last session on the last day where we were sort of working together to workshop those recommendations, which would then come into the report, was really fantastic, because it kind of showed the outcome of the speeches or presentations that we had over the couple days. You know, it wasn't just that those had happened and that they were you know, good. It kind of showed what people took away from them, which was really good.
So if I can ask, what was the cost of the conference? Did the attendance that you got and the costs that they covered with the funding support from the university allow you to do it without it being a massive impost on your organization? I think is the question I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely. I think the important thing is that for us, when we were deciding to do this conference, it was important, as we've talked about previously, that it was accessible, and so that it was accessible to everyone to attend. So whilst there were, you know, attendance fees, if possible, they were made as low as could be. And we also had like significant backing from the university to provide places for University of Sydney students to attend without having to place a fee. So that was really fantastic. And I think because it was sort of a conference centered around, you know, advocacy and activism, a lot of people were willing to be involved for, you know, minimal cost, because it is something that is so important, which is really good. But also I'm conscious of always ensuring that victim survivors are paid for their work, and you know, people who in this area are, you know, paid for their work, because a lot of the time I do think the burden becomes on kind of victim survivors to just sort of share their experiences without really recognizing, you know, the work that they have to do to be able to be in a position to do that. So yeah, I think, like, you know, in the most diplomatic way possible, it was an expense, but it was an expense that we could shoulder, and that we, you know, had a lot of support for. And I think it was, you know, something that was very manageable, and something that I don't think should put anyone off in the future wanting to do this sort of an event.
No, absolutely. So do you see the future being led by USU, or will you look to partner with other organizations to take it on the road, if you like?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like both of those are fantastic options. I think for us, this is really something that we have been super passionate about and have taken carriage of. And I really want to honor the work of our board and our working party there. But also the point of the conference is having that sort of resource sharing and that collaboration at that student level. So I think definitely there is the opportunity to be partnering with other universities and other unions, and I think that's something that our board and union would be, really excited about. I think it's something that we're keen to play a part in, but at the end of the day, you can't find a solution to any of these things by yourself. So
No.
yeah, I think that sort of partnership moving forward is definitely something to explore.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's do that, because I can certainly add grease to the wheels in that discussion across our membership, because I'm sure there'll be people both in and outside of our membership. Some universities will want to get involved in this as well. So yeah, let's continue that discussion moving forward. What feedback mechanisms did you have in place to gather input from your attendees afterwards as to how you might improve moving forward?
Yeah, so we had a fantastic response to our initial feedback survey, which we sent out to all attendees, which kind of echoed some of the things that I've been talking about in terms of timing and sort of the ability of having more attendees, that sort of thing. So that was really good. We've also been very open with communication back and forth. We sent through the report, but we also mentioned that if anyone had any feedback or thoughts on how that wanted to be changed or represented, we were happy to take that on board. I think the thing that was so fantastic about the conference was that the community there were so communicative and respectful and willing to, authentically discuss the issues and authentically kind of discuss the solutions. So I think that those kind of communication channels were established at the conference, and so there was feedback throughout the conference and after. And yeah, I think we made a community and a space in which people felt they could kind of give ideas or give feedback, because at the end of the day, it's something that we all want to improve and to find a solution for.
100%, 100%. One of the things that I know is a struggle for our membership, both in the professional space and in the kind of student leader space, is handover. How do you keep the conversation going when every 1 or 2 years, depending on where you are, the key players move on? How do you how are you going to take that on to ensure this continues to grow?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's such a valid point, and one that we actually talked about a few times at the conference, because that is one of the issues that we find when we're having these kind of student-led initiatives or student kind of advocacy groups, is that, after 1 or 2 years, the group turns over and you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. So I think at the USU, particularly over the past 2 years, and particularly thanks to Naz in her presidency, we've had a big focus on kind of formalizing those handover processes. And we've also had a big focus on ensuring that when we have our working parties for initiatives and events like this, we have board directors that are not just on the executive, but are in their first year. I think it's increasing those communication channels, increasing that transparency, and yeah, really formalizing those handover processes. I think that's also something that we're working on in our clubs and societies on campus, because they face a similar issue of, once you lose the person who's been in the law society for 5 years, a lot of that knowledge is kind of lost. So yeah, I think that's a really important one. And also, if we're looking to challenge particular policies or particular trends at, universities or other institutions, it's important that those institutions can't just wait out students graduating. So yeah, I think
that's right. Yeah,
those handover processes.
Fabulous. Do you have a website or a page specific to this ongoing initiative and the outcomes and the reports?
We don't actually, no, not a specific page, but that's definitely something we could take on board. I think we're in the process still of deciding exactly how we're going to publicize the report. We are meeting with the university, as I mentioned, in May, and we will have another meeting of the working party soon, but it was a huge effort for everyone involved, so we've kind of taken a bit of a breath and a bit of a break there, but yeah, moving forward, definitely that's something we can look into, and I think that would be really good to do, but not as of yet, no.
Yeah, okay. Again, I think that's another thing that we should keep discussing as a dialogue between us, because I have 55 members across Australia and New Zealand in this space that would be interested in this work. So maybe we look at hosting something on our page as well in support of what you're doing, because I think it's certainly very valid and deserves as much communication as possible. I suppose one of my closing questions then would be obviously the Accord is a hot topic in our space, and there's way too much in there to read, and until the government reacts, we don't know what's going to come of it. But it looks likely that there is going to be a new ombudsman regulatory body that oversees it. Do you see that as an opportunity in this space?
Yeah, I see that in the action plan as a huge opportunity. I think one of the things that was made clear to me throughout the conference is a huge issue with responses to student safety and harassment and assault on campus, is that the responses vary between institution, and that makes it institutions and within the institutions, whether it be clubs and societies or colleges or that sort of thing. And that makes it very hard for victim survivors to know where to go, know how to, find support. And also it makes it very hard to have cohesive reporting of these kinds of instances, because everywhere does it so differently. So I think the most fantastic part about having that kind of ombudsman and having that action plan is that it's more sort of universal, and I think that was the idea of the conference, is bringing those groups together.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous, and I think there might be problems coming out of such an ombudsman, but I think there might be some great solutions as well. So I think you're right. I think it does provide opportunities. Naz, can I just quickly shoot across to you? Obviously, you've been in the background listening to a lot of this, but what would you say that you're most proud of coming out of this, and what are your hopes moving forward?
I think, like I said, Onor led a lot of the background work on this, but I am most proud of the USU team for actualizing a plan that we'd had for the last 2 years. For me, it was such a rich and diverse conversation on such a pivotal and critical issue that we are facing at this university and universities across Australia. And to see the remarkable enthusiasm and sheer leadership that was shown at a USU level by Onor and her team to lead that work, and then bring along student leaders from across the country to empower them to work on such crucial initiatives and policies to take back to their universities. It showcases that as long as you put lived experience, as long as you put students who are facing the crisis at the forefront of these issues, you are going to get outcomes. Whereas if you work on policies in abstract through consultation, for example, once a year, none of that will get translated. So my hope for this conference and for the strategies going forward is to place students at the forefront of the consideration and to let them lead the work, because they are going to come up with policies that are going to be impactful, because they know what it feels like. They know, they've gone through it, and they know what will work and what won't. So I'm most proud, again, very much of Onor and her team and every student leader that came with such an open mind and heart to listen, to curate, and to feed back that information to leaders across Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you, Naz. Well, listen, from my perspective, like I say, I've been around the traps probably far too long. This initiative is not just wholesome. The way you've gone about delivering it, the feedback I've had from colleagues is so impressive. I can't say, you know, and please, if I come across as a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Patronizing, I apologize, but you're both so impressive, and the work you've done is brilliant. So please feel very proud of yourself, celebrate with your team, and please do keep the ball rolling, because I think it's needed, and I know the more we get of this, the closer we'll be to a better, safer place on campus. So thank you both very much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's been fantastic to chat. And yeah, thank you to you and SEN support for this initiative. Couldn't have done it without you. And yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see the momentum that we've built and hopefully continue it into the future.
Yes. Well, let's just make sure it does.
Yes.
You know, with our shared resources, we just got to make sure it continues moving forward. So well done, the pair of you, and thanks again for your time.